Hello everyone, slightly different video today. As you can see, I'm thanking you for the 3 million views on Schwerpunkt. You can't actually see that I reached that milestone because for some strange reason, the analytics show the entirety of views that I've ever received since the beginning of the channel, while the public page essentially shows only the views of the videos that have remained. So since, as you know, in 2021, I re-uploaded some videos, I lost some hundreds of thousands of views, but I've actually gotten there, and each and every view counts in a deeper sense than merely statistics. I usually make this kind of videos. I've done it for the first, the second million. However, perhaps some of you would imagine this milestone are becoming actually very close to one another, because even though we mostly plateaued in terms of views in the last couple of years, there's still been an increased frequency in spikes, especially in the last month or so. It seems that the algorithm has kicked in at some sort of more relevant level with double the traffic for some reason. This means that YouTube is suggesting my videos more frequently, which is something you wouldn't expect, really. You know that last year there's been this major scaling down of views for so many channels out there. The YouTube algorithm was changed the last year's February, March, and I felt all of that. We had slightly less views than before, nothing sort of that removed us from the aforementioned plateau, but in fact with sort of less temper, especially in summer, there was a dip, a dive for every single channel that I know of, right? There were many lamentations, differently from the ones of the previous years. This was actually something that YouTube openly recognized, because they really changed the algorithm in ways that are not sort of so important to discuss right now. The distinct impression that I had from all these years now is that there are some, aside from sort of what comes from my format, that naturally is not particularly competitive or sophisticated, whatever, there are all these sort of layers of pressures of curtain over a channel's growth that you're supposed to break through at some point, and in our case through the sheer amount of videos, but also the increasing engagement that they provided. The idea is that I've always actually had a high view retention, in part because my videos naturally are very long, so overall probably that is not the case, but still for YouTube that is good, because watch length is mostly what they care about the most. Even more than views per se. So something has been definitely changing, and it really feels this has been honestly the case every single year. There's been like a scaling up. There's always been a change. Every year had its own specificities in terms of performance, of types of videos. Now we'll talk about this. I also realized as a consequence that the channel has kept growing in terms of subscribers recently, faster than in the last couple of years, in a very, again, organic, consistent way. So probably there are lots of people listening to me right now as one of their first videos of mine that are probably wondering, okay, but what's this channel about? And this has been the great question, let's say, at least for those who would come across Schwerpunkt in all of a sudden without any specific recommendation, without having known my work prior. Unfortunately, while I am very much in control of what happens from the other side, I know naturally sort of the videos that I created by by myself, authorially speaking, but I also know how they perform. I know all of the playlists of all the sort of the backstage work to organize the work. YouTube does not really provide with anything like, okay, look at this channel, this is different from the others. It's more like a library, an encyclopedia or something, right? Most of you probably don't even know that there are playlists out there that are not so important, because normally playlist views keeps sort of a retention, but and increases watch length. But because those playlists are particularly, they're not just many, but in this sense they are sort of describing very specific themes that you may be individually interested in. It's obvious that if at this point I've made 2,800 videos almost, most of you are probably never going to even know what most of them are, right? Even if they're regular followers. I make these videos practically almost every day from years, and unfortunately, YouTube does not simply show you the older work unless it's somehow algorithmically blessed, so that some of you actually know me from some videos that at this point several years ago that are also frankly terrible. I mean, the historical content is likely not bad, depending on what it is. We radically improved from then, and also relatively fast. Yet, this is what essentially YouTube shows you as a shortcut, like show videos by Schwerpunkt in the suggested videos in the right, or click on my channel, say must watch videos, and you will have, because we expanded the plethora of sort of more watched videos as we have now been surpassing regularly the 1,000 in terms of views per video de facto. And this trend naturally is bringing sort of more on the table. So gradually, here it's always very difficult to predict how things will evolve. And in a sense, we will try to discuss this today, right? But in general, like, again, most videos are hidden, are lost into a level of research that actually would be quite simple to effectuate. If it wasn't also for the fact that if you use the search function on YouTube, very often you don't really get by name the actual list of videos. YouTube will that talk about the stuff that are titled that way. YouTube will still propose you something different, right? And so this may be a problem. In many ways, it's always been a problem for the channel. I also recently last year created, and this year it's been finally crawled by Google's bots for, in this sense, like search finding, so to say, being indexed, right? A site of my channel that frankly is not updated, and I tried it. There are some, I think, just 100 or so videos that are a bit more telling the truth, that I attached some extra, like some description, basic one. This was an experiment. I used AI to make a summary of my videos, like 200 words each, to say, okay, let's see if Google actually, and I can't see this from my own analytics on YouTube, actually eventually ends up showing this stuff, because there is a lot of historical information in that, and I can see from the external views that this Google site actually brings more views to the channel. And it hasn't been the case, apparently, even though I'm not going to give up, right? I know that paid sites would be better. Google sites are definitely not the best. But I've also seen that fundamentally, if you really want to crack YouTube's algorithm, and that is not something that I even particularly intensely strive to do at all, telling the truth, and you can see it. In fact, is something that comes with time. My channel is really unique in as much as I don't know any YouTube creator that makes actually substantially relevant historical content of this length in this quantity, right? We're truly unique. What you find here, as you know, is not a matter of quote-unquote niche. Well, I'm trying to sort of brainstorm a little bit. We will focus on all these topics because that's a word that comes around, and they make niche topics. And telling the truth, I reject this terminology, not for me, you can't keep using that term, but let's say, in a sense that it seems to me that the topics I historically cover may be a professional bias, but are actually very important. Even if, yes, they are niche for what, generally speaking, pop culture has turned into, they're still very big, important, relevant topics, and I always feel somehow embarrassed by the fact that I have to deal with them in just 2 hours long introductions. Of course, there is more in-depth stuff too, and it doesn't feel adequate at all for the importance of the topic itself. But that turns out, oh my god, it's so deep and so niche. It should be like, there should be hundreds of videos like this on YouTube, and as we often see at the end of each video, every once in a while at least, we search for a specific topic and nobody meaning nobody has ever uploaded anything. Do you have the playlist video how much people upload regularly on YouTube? An immensity of content and certain very basic topics. I'm still, like in medieval history, for example, I'm still the only person that actually covered online even, I think, aside from published papers or anything that you can find, let's say people that are sort of like bloggers or sort of disclosures, etc., like what I'm doing on YouTube, as a matter of fact, because it's obvious, we may talk about this as well, that I don't publish peer-reviewed articles in the ways I make videos as well. But that's in fact also a very important purpose of this video, that is to say, what is the actual point of the channel? Because Schwerpunkt has been, I can't say heavily, but still, nor widely, but still relevantly debated at some point. I also responded to different, say, not even criticism, but objections and or questions that revolved, as you know, around the fact of lacking of citations and whatever, that caused and that were incredibly interesting, mostly from a psychological point of view, because of all the things that could create problems because of the lack of citation, it doesn't seem that the people who point these things out are minimally interested in. They are mostly interested in sort of, they're basically declaring or indirectly stating that they have no clue whether what I do is historically accurate, because obviously they do not have the level of competence to independently assess that, and therefore presuming that this is just like yet another YouTube channel, or that what we do here is fundamentally like for the sake of entertaining or cheap views, or striving for that kind of viral reach with thing that is quote unquote marketed. And I also don't know, in fact, any person that is doing what I'm doing for the purpose that I have. And I would like to treat this video a bit for it, and especially sort of trying to involve you in part in this, and I'll explain you how and why. This can be an interesting chance to discuss it. I used to make regular channel updates over the years, because, you know, when also views were small, I said, okay, well, there's not much of a difference. Then I realized that some of these tended to break a bit the flow of views. So if I concentrate all this stuff in a single video, maybe, and we make sort of history, otherwise we can sort of better. As you know, I tended to make the so-called seasonal specials 4 times a year talking about the channel. Then I sort of withdrew from that. You haven't seen any channel updates last winter. So it's always difficult to, even for a channel like mine that usually does not use script, or at least sort of tends to digress in certain aspects, to be more critical and to observe, sort of brainstorm further different aspects too. However, speak of this. This is not an official video presentation of the channel, but I have to make certain things understood in ways that must be as comprehensive as possible. So first of all, to tell you also how it is from my side, because I basically never talk about myself. I also want to do it in any sort of meaningful personal way, not because I think at some point, especially if the channel somehow escalates, even though I don't think that's how it's simply going to happen, there's more like a gradual build up, and we have very good momentum, telling the truth, but you may never know what the algorithm does. I have no problem in becoming a quote unquote, if not public, at least visible figure. And I don't think that, see, this is the point of the channel. This is since the beginning, the entirety of the thing. I made some videos about my doctoral journey. I talk about different private things, even sentimental stuff, but always applied to something that can be useful, can be pertinent, believe it or not, even in fact in these topics to the channel. And so you have these terrain playlists. I don't know how much notice that of you notice that if you're really seeking for this more, not necessarily philosophical, but more sort of frame topics, more extemporary reflections, you can check that out. It was a stronger thing back in the day. Now, again, we do more history, which I think is the best thing. And this is exactly the philosophy of the channel. It's primarily talking history. However, really, it's obvious that at this point, at several years distance, what I used to do at the beginning of Schwerpunkt is barely comparable, or in this sense explainable. And this is paradoxical to an extent because the channel has actually become ever more strictly historical, but from my perspective it has actually started to depart from that in a quasi-transcendental fashion. This was admittedly the entire point of the channel that I alluded to on different occasions, and I won't be necessarily more explicit in this video as well. It's obvious that there is a more earthly dimension that is realizing that, yes, for 2,800 videos, 3 million views are not even that much. Like, I'm very thankful for those. I don't complain about it at all. I always know that going on like this, I wouldn't have any sort of massive spike or surge or all of a sudden, whatever. And as I've always stated, my greatest gain on this channel, aside from donations, they're really sort of esteem people for making me, because again, I have other sources of income. I don't rely on Schwerpunkt. The donations help in a broader psychological and also material sense, but it's really the symbol of it, that there are people who are simply willing to sacrifice in a willing fashion for Schwerpunkt. I haven't paywalled anything. I have always been open in that sense. That is important, but the greatest gain, actually, that also fuels the content, the channel itself, is the fact that the more I learned, historically wise, do you have the palest idea of how much I've covered myself? Like, we've been growing together, so to say, in this journey. And the more there is to do, the more I realized there is to do. When I started the channel, I said, if I burn these topics for one video, I won't be able to make another one. And today, it's basically like I could even make 1,000 topics about the same video. It would always be new, original, fresh, kind of thought-provoking, especially as far as I'm concerned with learning about specific aspects of all the themes that we discuss. So, it's also much easier today to make videos than it used to be back in the day. I'm just more able personally. There are also better tools. You've seen them, even if it were just for the thumbnail, like with the AI accurate sort of transposition of, say, I don't know, correct arms and armor for a specific seal. That's very interesting, and it opens a huge amount of opportunities. It's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in the future regarding this, but as I said, like, I predict that there is going to be a very consistent stepping up at so many different levels, properly of the quality of history of the entertainment. Surely, I don't plan to come to videos at some point, but it's possible that animations. But it's possible that we can sort of enhance that. But that the channel in and of itself has this broader practical purpose, at least aside from what goes on in my mind. Because imagine, like, potential exploding, literally, like scaling at a level that was really unbelievable, even up to a few years ago. To imagine would be possible, even though at least with this speed and with this ease, right? But what in fact this gets down to is truly an encyclopedia of history, because that's also the objective. Yes, the channel revolves around military and religious history, for sure, but aside from the fact that everything is baked into it unavoidably, but we are starting to cover practically every single possible topic that can help link all the rest. And this has been, as I was saying before, it's also a pity that YouTube does not properly structure its content and its visibility around this sort of hyper-link kind of modular, almost three-dimensional understanding of like how you could access this content. There is just pages and lists and that's it, right? And very often, again, hiding the rest of your content or not rendering particularly visible. But I presume that your experience at large has been the one of sort of coming across my videos really by accident and starting this, in fact, from a very tangential point at some point, or maybe getting into the midst of the more sort of intense topics, and then gradually discovering how much there actually was behind this. And at some point, there is this wall of distrust, likely stemming from the fact that YouTube definitely has not made a great work to market its content. You realize that history channels we made last year also pretty sort of nasty review of sort of several tens of some of the most important history channels on YouTube tend to be formatted, first of all, for that algorithmic push, which my content definitely isn't, right? So you always find this 15 to 20 minute videos filled with ads and sort of wasting time with visuals, really diluting even more in that sense any possible content. I've always said, normally my introductions within the same video can be of 40 minutes before we get into the other 2 hours of the content. And this is all structured, right? It developed gradually, messily, especially at the beginning. But I think that the structure of the video is not pre-planned in any significant way, but my videos end up to be particularly structured, and I hope it shows, right? Perhaps the least structured is exactly these ones, because I really have I'm just speaking, right? I'm not really doing anything. I have nothing in front of me. I'm just coming up with different concepts that can be useful of all what I normally think about the channel, telling the truth. And this is also very interesting because the channel is not really the primary activity. As you know, in my life, it's not even something that I can't sort of depart from. Sometimes, I went on vacations, you probably not even noticed because I had prepared some videos in advance already. And I mostly work with else, right? But they really are very interesting to make. Again, I learn a lot from them, and they give me a timing that has become important in my life. So I plan to continue doing this because I don't see a valid reason, at least, to stop it, especially entirely. Like, I can imagine certain things in my life changing at some point, but not in the sense that I would sort of leave the channel or its potential. On the contrary, I think, and I've been always very open about this, that even though, again, one may never know what happens, my intentions have always and consistently remained continuing this and bringing it to a next level, which, however, largely depends on, at the end of the day, how also not the process of me trying, but say whether it's going to get there or not at some point, as something much bigger and of cultural relevance in some way. I don't know how this can happen. Naturally, there are lots of channels out there that have hundreds of thousands of views, even more or less covering the same topics that I do, and they receive more views, again, because they're shorter, because they use visuals, because they're more polished, but they especially don't require any particular commitment to they don't really even challenge you more than much. They're not sort of normally friendly. Even the attitude probably is not the critical and polemical one that I have on a regular basis. So it's all a different, probably it's a different world. And what is strange about this, in fact, is that you would think that on YouTube, by this point, there would be like an explosion of creativity. You would find literally every single possible kind of content, whereas it seems to me that everything is uniformed to the same level, if not of shallowness, because there are some videos, some channels that make also in-depth stuff, but they are either, in that sense, truly niche or very sectorial, at least. That is to say, I don't know, you find the expert on naval warfare in the 19th century, and he's basically talking only just about that, and truly about things that most people probably are not going to be interested or to be particularly curious about, unless they are specifically naval sort of military enthusiasts, so to say. But this is the point with Schwerpunkt that goes back also to the idea, but how does he do this? Like, is he really competent in all of this? Like, is his content good, whatever? I think that by itself you can sort of understand that the content is good, considering especially YouTube's average, right? If you follow my content, you can be sure that none of this is based on speculation, because the reasons also that we bring in order to make us to speculate are at least informed. So we go from point A to point B with something back in it. So speculation is part of, maybe this thing was like this, we don't know. But as far as the basis of that thing, these are also pretty conventional, pretty fact-checkable. That's why I also really found it ridiculous that there are people who were asking for sources to do what? Like, they would never check all the sort of infinite aggregation of information, their sources, and also the way I actually sort of interpret on the basis of my own background, which is something that you can't quite simply reduce to a citation. Say, if I were to talk to you about, for example, my field of research that I sometimes actually discuss, but I never told you what it is really. I've been vague about it. Also because I'm actually the only person who studies this stuff. And in that, exactly for the reason that I just hinted at, like, I am truly the first person pioneering this field, at least at this level, and I am just in a place where I can produce completely original content. Right, and even if, say, there is a notion like, I don't know, when a king was born or whatever, like, these are things that you could easily fact check yourself, and especially like if you're really interested in this, if your request is just a hunger for bibliographical lists or whatever. The most banal thing, really, we live in the internet era. You can use even the Wikipedia bibliographical lists. You buy one book talking about that, you have literally hundreds. Like, you can do this in a click, right? Then the delivery will take some time. You will have the actual physical book or the Kindle format immediately. And you can look at all the books that talk about this, all the sources employed, and you can pick those and buy those and research those. So there is no excuse in terms of what kind of fact-checkability, especially if, as it seems, that because problems like this would normally arise in terms of plagiarism or copyright infringement, right? Where did you take it as information from or whatever? But what people fixate, oddly enough, about this is, and I would say millions of views, nobody ever told me, like, this is, take this thing down, you copied it from me or whatever, because I don't work like that. It's always interpretative and it's always critical, and it's obvious that the information can be found in any ways, especially if this is something that tens of books talk about. But if aside from the fields where I am really absolutely capable of expressed informed opinions on the thing, like, it seems that the only purpose why people ask this at the end of the day is to undermine my credibility. And this is something that I love to do. I am, in this sense, involved in a very heavy level of trolling, because the complete lack of sort of giving a blip about it is the thing that fuels the same attention towards my work. And since I know how this is done behind the scenes, I have sort of nothing to worry about. And so I'm just continuing to do it and teaching sort of perhaps the harder lesson is that you have to grow, like as I've grown during the research, to find what I need, being able to put it together, being able to sort of understand it, to therefore being able to comment on it, to explain it, etc. And that is not something that you resolve with citation. I see some YouTube channels that are actually ridiculous, like, the ones who use the visuals and whatever. There are some good channels that do citation. I'm not saying that this is something that I'm opposed to. Actually, I should do it. But the main thing I see, this channels that pays, there are sort of Wikipedia level 10 minutes to 15 minutes, the aforementioned YouTube algorithmic format with visuals, where you know that they spent money for the visuals only, because with ChatGPT, if you want to, even without feeding it with any source of whatever, you can simply have a perfect script for such a length, right? And they're completely inconsistent. They're completely irrelevant. If you wonder why I can make hundreds of videos on a single topic and why we should make it, it's that there is much more to look at into the subject in a way that at that point transcends any sort of attachment to any even specific source of information other than the primary ones of some sort of scholars and names that we make, etc. You can absolutely check the work of, and it's uniquely like you find this lists of 20 books that in and of itself is absolutely ridiculous. That is to say, if you want to sponsor those publications, fine, it's good. The more, again, these titles are out there, the more people buy it, the more people read it, the more people learn history, it's great. There's been, as you can imagine, in the last decades, some massive crisis of publications. We see it at every level, basically. And the problem with this is that literally, like, those 10, 15 minutes are something that I knew even, when I was, I don't know, a teenager. I could have written it myself. And you're giving me a list of tens of videos on the basis of which you allegedly found that information. And it is very often very poorly sort of explained and criticized. I mean, pick the other video I made, the series I'm making, this lasting 6 hours about in total, the strategy and tactics of the Roman military from, say, the 2nd century BCE to the 6th, so to say. I don't need a script for that. It's all by my sort of mind. That's how you talk in any serious fashion about the Roman military, if you really want to make this videos. Aside from the fact that everybody talks about the Roman military, and so nobody makes the videos that I make, say, about, I don't know, the Italian communes or German noblemen, or whatever. Like, it's in the Middle Ages, it's a completely different picture. But in this sense, my greatest question is, who actually does watch the stuff and why? Because the age of sort of the cartoonish video gaming kind of engagement is over. All right, it's become boring. Everybody has that. As kids of the 90s that like to watch, I don't know, Braveheart or Gladiator or whatever, and got hyped and bought the first Total Wars and all this stuff to finally have it. Kids nowadays don't really care, or they don't see the value of it. What actually, like, sort of, we grew up, I became a historian. This stuff is much more interesting to me through history books, through the views that I sort of grew into, because this is also the point that actually occurs when we talk about, I don't want to digress on the philosophy of history now that we reference the world citation stuff, but it's obvious that if you talk so long about history and across this vast amount of subjects, and you have a professional background, right? The interesting thing about this channel at this point has become, obviously, I've been always alone doing this. It's always been my informed, hopefully informed opinion versus the universe, so to say, is, maybe you may want to appreciate there is somebody like me that is doing this without bothering too much, or without pretending to sort of to battle with my with my opinion, right? Because my opinion took a little bit to be formed, and the reason why I've grown intolerant of also, like, any, not even criticism, but properly misunderstanding. There are people who praise me in the comments, for example, but say something, great video, Schwerpunkt, I love this, and they say something historical that is wrong that the video does not say. I would not allow that comment, right? I've made entire videos about the criticism that was turned to me in the comments that I did not allow, with people that sort of appeared and said, oh, thanks for answering that, as a matter of fact. So, and I wish there was any significant criticism to my work, especially in the historical merit of it, in the sense that, if I make mistakes, I make mistakes, right? But they're mostly lapses, or I exchange a name for another. For example, I can't tell you, nobody noticed, when I made that video about Johann I of Navarre, at some point I said, I don't know why I did that, whether I had poorly written the script or I had read Louis and whatever. I had confused Louis VIII with Louis IX. And it's not like I don't know who they are, given that I made entire videos, especially about Louis VIII. Louis IX is famous, even if I don't make videos about him. In fact, I would really like to do it, because this would have been, in fact, the great-grandfather of Johann, and I confused him with Louis IX. Mistake that a medievalist shouldn't make, or nobody should make to begin with, but that in this sense I was surprised myself to have done. I discovered it by myself. I will not tell you how. You maintain the mystery behind these things. Now, there is a person that watches my videos in private and told me about this, that is very interested in history as well, and that obviously thinks that the entire video works perfectly fine, also because I did not expand on a parallel history where Johann was the great-granddaughter of Louis IX in particular. And you see, even in that case, in that video, one source was literally the published, that I used for making the video, the published testament of Johann that she wrote when she was she was aware that she was dying. She died like the week later or something. And that explains the foundation of that institution for teaching the youth. And so that is even public, and it's just something that I put into it, and that makes part of the video. Do I need really to, like, if a person needs to know this, do I really need to put a citation for that? I mean, you can't simply find it. You go on archive.org, and in a way or another, you search things like Queens of France, whatever, and you find that. Or you can find it throughout, because it's published through many different books. And so what's my point of citing that? It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. Nobody cares, especially, as proven also by the general interaction, because I don't get, believe it or not, now that you can't see the dislikes, or in fact, in any case, since they can't be seen, people don't probably dislike also less, but I never had sort of less than the 50% like to begin with, and at this point it's like 95 at worst. But I also don't actually get negative remarks about my historical work, right? The only negative remarks is people that either literally do not understand what I said. With fact check, there is the script of the video, so you can't lie about it, or literally have like opinions like this glass is half empty, no, it's half full. That's also something I'm not going to discuss, especially considering that I provided extensive amount of water discussion in order, in the measure of the glass, so to say, in order to look at the matter, which matters in fact in practically expandable ways to determine something like that for the sake of example, or that just hate me for some reason, maybe because I blocked them and they have to take revenge by sort of completely making up stuff that in any case is going to be debunked by the same sort of videos. So it's something that at this point I frankly don't care about at all. So I understand that people are interested in these topics, but considering that, again, on YouTube, you don't even find people talking about some of the most prominent battles, and not some prominence because I think they were prominent, but because literally they are in any manual prominent. But hey, on YouTube, because of cultural reasons or social reasons, people do not cover them. And actually, the relevance of my content is exactly this, that and this is what people tend to mistake sometimes as, because these things appeared here and there outside of YouTube, like that my quote-unquote ideology, whatever they mean. So in other words, if they hear something they don't like because they have a different political opinion that is not informed by anything or whatever, I especially on Reddit, where they are sort of paranoid about any conservative trace or whatever, it must be you have an ideology, or you're a fascist, or there is something that must disqualify. This is the times we live in. We perfectly know how this works, and the sense is that criticism is useful to actually deliver the same historical information, right? Let's leave aside things like that derail into nominalism, whatever, like whether we all have a bias or whatever, but I don't believe in this. Like what I believe that we all have a bias, but the thing I care about that actually makes the difference is what is that bias conducive to, right? If my bias is, for example, pointing out that there is not been an adequate spread of evidential, political, military, religious, traditional history through sort of conventional education, say in school, where obviously people, and this is also in university, but not because these things are, as some people say, there's just Marxism that has taken over everything. Fortunately, this is not the case. I can tell by experience. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be where I am right now. There are these things, right? They are real, right? There is a heavy leftist after World War II in educational system in my country. At some point, they sat at a table. The Christians took one part of the institutions. The communists took another part of the institutions. This is what happened in Western Europe to begin with, like after World War II during the Cold War. the necessity of pointing out that was a massive socioeconomic bias that did not actually balance out the lack of this socioeconomical history. That is important, and I also cover much of it, but that sort of tended to substitute and to erase, in fact, other historical interpretations before, instead of integrating them in something ever more cohesive and comprehensive, and that makes sense because it's based on reality. And this is what is mostly challenged also when it gets to the citation thing. It didn't actually happen with me, but people tend to do this all the time. Some of you, for example, have asked me to cover certain channels that sort of debunk the idea that Indo-European languages had a common sort of theological backbone, and or I mean, I'm saying theological because that's exactly what I cover, even though I don't remember that video, that guy with, the orange, I don't remember, it's also with red hair. It's very famous. It tends to be, he's a left-leaning, at least, figure, or at least surely he's not a conservative. And so there is this idea that the wizard arrives and fact checks things in 3 or 4 citations, and that's, oh my God, all the work of even the greatest thinkers is invalidated, except, eventually saying terrible things that obviously tell you this person has no, I'm not referring to him in particular, but has not the education, the culture, the actual familiarity with that scholarship and whatever, and just picked certain things from the internet himself with a research, with a citation, okay, but without also much of the broader context and comprehensive knowledge that is required while covering these things. And in fact, the major criticism that I think that my channel has ever derived, again, there is not much controversy around my channel. There are very strange things, like Veritas and Caritas citing me, I think, after Fred, that is sort of a person that I particularly aligned with from a political point. Also, Veritas and Caritas is, as you know, a left. We had a left-leaning figure. We had an interview. It was completely civilized. He listed me as second best historian, even though I don't cite things, at least on a regular basis, because we constantly make even entire videos based on specific sources. We all explicitate primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever. But let's say there is a recognition that, in this sense, travalicates some mere and ideological dichotomy where people just base themselves on which side of the aisle really am. Like, this thing gets often skewed. People really, this is what the internet does. That guy said the thing, and that guy never said that. And this happens with me, and I find it amusing because also these ideas eventually go nowhere, but people could be confused about it. For example, we've seen in some of my Q&As, I don't remember which ones, but that Serbian guy that I replied to multiple times, and he said that he talked with, I don't remember which AI, whether it was Grok or ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini or whatever, and he literally said, I think that you are from, it was about my nationality. You're from here because this AI told me. The AI does not know that. Not just because I've never said it, nor there is evidence of where I come from. Actually, people debate this. It's probably not even that difficult to understand where I come from, but let's say it's not just false, but it's also like you can prompt the AI to make you tell different things about the same topic. AI is not reliable. But the problem with AI is that if it fishes, say, again, somebody said this about this channel. This happens to many other creators around which there are massive controversies for different reasons. The AI is dumb, at least the commercial free one that, I don't know, the more advanced models never really paid for AI, nor I'm really looking forward to in any way. They tend to say, okay, there's a controversy around this person because some people, it doesn't even put it in this way, but basically because they fish the information from the internet, and if on the internet there are some people who make up things about you or just create the sense of debate or criticism, etc., like all of a sudden what is relevant is not your work. Then naturally AI has very limited capacity to simply comprehend. Now, for example, Grok also scans scripts, which I think is very interesting because you can be better defendable by your own work. But they can't cover, for example, 2,800 videos. So it's easier to find, I don't know, aforementioned Reddit discussions than anything else. And so having a sort of different idea of how or why something it is this way. There are some channels, I will not make any names, but that I'm not a particular fan of for different reasons, that, however, I've seen being shrouded in controversy also through what AI reports about them, because there are people who said things that they actually debunked being false and being all publicly available, but for some reason AI does not make 2 plus 2, or somehow is not programmed to check the entire picture and offer some properly fair, objective, neutral judgment on it, right? So it's actually something that I'm very interested in, because I don't think that any controversy about my channel would even be a negative one for the channel itself, meaning that there can be naturally falsity that is spread, but I would get more visibility, and this will definitely bring also sort of more clarity and greater capacity to spread my opinion on all of this. And so controversy online is something that we are habituated to. Personally, I'm surprised. In fact, at the beginning of Schwerpunkt, I said, oh my God, now I will start talking history. Everybody will attack me from all sides. Because the internet is like this. After 3 million views, honestly, I haven't had any major issue or even minor issue that I can think of whatsoever. Like normal, I don't know, things I said before, like this guy says this is not true, or they disagree with you for some reason. That happens sporadically, episodically. It's also because we don't have a huge traffic. But again, 3 million views. Have I had any major issue in this kind of stuff? Zero. And actually, oh my God, I hope that at some point flares, just for showing how ridiculous that was. But I will not say anything about this, because I want to leave it as a spoiler at some point, if you're interested in drama. But I have everything saved, so this is also the advantage of the internet, that everything that you do, you can track in a way. And so it's going to be hilarious at some point. But truly and really, I've never been particularly I've never really felt particular negativity stemming from my work. And on the contrary, it seems that my content is able to bring together people that, not just the calmer, more moderate, more sort of sensible ones, even when they're actually aligned in different directions, even from mine, but that builds something. There is a shared consensus, especially in the silent majority of all people that watch, support, etc., that say, look, this stuff is actually valuable, right? This is not like the average YouTube channel. It may be more difficult to consume. It may not be particularly entertaining if you're looking at, especially like the flashy sort of information, the sort of better visuals, etc. But if you look at it, and I have run these experiments also in my sort of in my circle, let's put it in this way, very close circle, admittedly, and personally, I don't know, I would never watch my own videos, but not because I think they're particularly bad, but aside from the fact that I make them, I don't have any interest. I remember in the moment what I discuss in them, and so I have a general idea about the world. But let's say, I would say, okay, well, I don't encourage people, especially from my family or whatever, to actually watch them, but they pressed me on it, said, okay, but I want to watch them regularly. And they started watching them regularly and said, wow, you really actually like this stuff? Like, you actually want to hear the thing? It says, yeah, because I like to learn the history of it. I like the subjects. I like it's not even how you explain that is interesting to them. Then I don't know, maybe other people don't think it's interesting, but I mean, in general, like, this is not just about the information. This is how this actually went down, why, in a bigger picture that considers sort of many different levels of the story. This is not a last minute. This is, in fact, the difference. And that's why I think it's really helpful for a more charitable approach to my content in absolute terms, also probably from by yourselves, for yourselves, even if you're not going to interact with me or talk about me or whatever, that this is not a content put together with some, oh my god, I found out this, now I have to let other people know. This is sometimes I spend years thinking about a video that I want to make that I already know a lot about, and I'm talking certain fields that they're also pretty wide and that I have never yet discussed on Schwerpunkt, that I'm actually very knowledgeable about, sometimes even more than medieval history. And that somehow I decided to take my time to sort of refine the knowledge of, and or to just having them in my mind and putting more than it's not about preparation at all, telling the truth, because I'm able to discuss them immediately, even if I want. But needing, in fact, all this amount of video to glue together, to pack together in a way that that video in it would make more sense, or would be sort of better framed, or would have a broader, a broader and better sort of context for being properly understood, which is something I care very much about. Like the first point, like when I sit here and start recording, is not, oh, now I have to be accurate about what I'm saying. That I already know it is, because the research comes before this point. What actually matters here is for the content to be relevant and for you to understand, for me to be able to explain it to you, and especially explain what matters. Why are we talking about this? This is something you don't really find on other channels, or at least you find it on other channels if they are very particularly researched. In fact, videos themselves that come up every once in a while, but they are hardly or ever part of the series that I make, are ever as you know, I don't cite my credentials as because I have a doctorate, I'm the I never really said I'm right because I'm a PhD. Never. You can check all my videos, even though I do think that authority matters more than that. Say the historical accuracy is something that goes beyond citations, and that what you're actually saying, if you know the history, remains accurate, whether you like it or not. There are great academic examples of this, of people who wrote masterpieces in historiography, but for some reason they had not listed the proper bibliography. I'm talking Kantorowicz, by the way, so not really some random, for those who, you see, here I made an example. If I had not made, and if you don't know, by the way, which work I'm referring to, your problem. I'm not going to tell, I said it many times actually on Schwerpunkt, but let's say this is the point. I talk to people who have the capacity of go check that and understand what it is about, and to have their minds work on it, even just to type a question to AI and say, what is actually talking about? That's how it starts, right? And what matters in these videos is what kind of relevance they have today, right? None of the videos I've made have been anecdotal. There's always been a point to them. They're always been entwined with a wall, and especially they are always presented in a way that makes sense, that is important today. You would be surprised, say, in this sense, it's not really strategizing in ideological terms. This is about, considering what is happening in the world, I mean, in general, is this video in this moment really useful, right? Or even, and I'm talking things like, I don't know, naturally in these years, lots of very intense things are happening out there. And so you would think, but Schwerpunkt, if you're talking about the Magyars, let's leave aside, for example, is it the last Hungarian election? In any case, you wouldn't find any specific link with like a topic like that. But in this sense, it's not like I even adjust the content, say, in the history of it, or at least the historicity of it, for it. But it is, how is this, say, there is a level of randomness, so to say. But in the moment in which I make the video, how is it going to be relevant for people to listen to this today? And if I had to explain to you what's going on in my head on a regular basis, probably there's no script for it, all right? This can't be written down. This can't be explained so simply. It's just a moral dimension that, unfortunately, for some that think that history is just mechanistic copy, is what actually and truly matters. Otherwise, what do you really want to here, right? Some sort of copy what we already know. It's sort of important, and you see there is a deep difference between this and making up history. Because history is just like science. It's not definitive by definition. You don't have to be a revisionist. You don't have to be a negationist, whatever that is. Any ism. I'm not referring to any specific historical topic per se. But let's say there are, in fact, these narratives. There's official history, there's mainstream history. There isn't such a thing, right? There is a broader consensus. There's conventional knowledge and whatever. But aside from the fact that this changes in some ways, and normally for some topics it can't really change because the evidence is there, like it can't be equivocated, especially the bigger the issue is. But in general, like it is true that on YouTube there are lots of charlatans that tend to sort of sell not even wrong information, right? But in this sense, an interpretation of it that is fundamentally bad, right? I don't want to use worse definitions, right? It's obvious that everything can be, as a consequence, profitably debated. But let's say there are some YouTube channels that decide that there is a broader aim. There is the more conventional, quote-unquote, agenda that you can imagine. And they tailor their videos on that. And arguably, everybody does this to an extent, because as I said before, like there is a purpose in talking about a certain type of themes of lengths compared to another, whatever. My idea is that this content should be corrective of things I've seen in society, online, with at university, in academia. And so the question there is also, it can't be just obviously about the event per se, because how everyone in these environments has decided to read this is different by a degree. And so at this point, you also have, if you have a greater knowledge than that, to point out, look, you can't even go as far as saying, I've met a person that believed something and now explain you why that is wrong, right? It doesn't have to be a psychoanalytical session, right? But it's obvious that when you look at history, I think the easiest thing to spot is, for example, somebody's political ideas by even just looking at what are their favorite historical topics. I think this is extremely easy. Like most of my work as a historian over time has become more like akin to the one of a psychologist than the one of a say, in this sense, also the psychology researchers, but let's say of some mere, okay, I'm just thinking about the sources, right? This is about what you have to tell to a first year class, for example, where kids will make people today, unfortunately, like they're just like children and 18, 19 years old still, but this is the point. The dumb questions at the end of the lesson are the same reason why I don't publish most of the comments that I receive. It's the same identical one, and it's useless to hide behind it. It's also useless to pretend that there aren't differences in this regard. I could simply say, well, this is my channel, I do whatever I want, but it's never about that. All what we discuss here is fundamentally history. If you look at my videos, even the more quote-unquote ideological ones, if we talk about tradition, if we talk about religion, if we talk about something that, and also politics in general, that sort of cuts deep into some people's core beliefs, it's never based on, now I have to tell you who the bad guys are, and then I put together the information that supports that. No, I'm actually starting from a basic lesson, or at least even a more in-depth advanced lesson on a given topic that is randomly picked at a point, and I'm explaining it on the basis of evidence and of all what we have done in this work, which on this channel, for example, on top of proper sort of sources, references, whatever, and again, is also all fact-checkable. So it's not really a matter of you're making it up, you're hiding it, you're sort of hiding comments because they actually tell that this thing is historically false. I don't accept comments because they are saying things that have either nothing to do with what I'm discussing, that understand something for another, just talk about ideology, and they don't have anything to do with any of the history at hand. It's not saying you are ideological and this history is instead in this other way. And it's literally like, I don't like this content because it's plenty. I block people from both the left, the right. This happens all the time. There is no broader, and this is what actually makes me rather dissatisfied about everything. Like that, there is no actual criticism about even my actual historical mistakes, whenever they are, right? And that's depressing. That's the thing. It makes you understand that probably most people who listen to my videos do not wire to them. They're not listening to what I'm saying. They're possibly. I doubt that they're incapable of understanding what I'm saying, regardless of my linguistic shortcomings. I think they truly don't care. Like I have, for example, surely lots of followers that just follow me because they think that I'm saying something in the videos that I'm actually not saying. And it's the same identical thing. I'm not letting them say that because there are also mechanical reasons for it. For example, like if you have a 2 hours video, and the first that you have to listen to in order to understand, the first thing you read comments that say something that has nothing to do with the video and make even people assume, because people are paranoid, that from the comment they can't guess what you're talking about without listening to you. Like the best is they don't see the comment. All right. And of course, if a comment is just a compliment or it's a criticism, it is fair. There are instances who said, look, here there is this mistake. Okay, thank you. I will allow that. But aside from the fact that that doesn't happen often euphemistically in this sense, because indeed the information is overwhelmingly correct. That's the point that really makes you think of why there is such an anxiety about determining whether something is correct or not. Because I think that people have no clue about history. Like they literally don't know the past. They don't have a broader culture. They don't see the point of building one nowadays. They're probably unused to understand sort of the deeper correlations between politics, warfare, society. And so if you start talking to them about something that especially challenges some of their ideological and sort of fanatical ideological presuppositions, it's going to be a bit difficult for them to have a positive opinion on you. But it's obviously a bit difficult for me to have a positive opinion on them. So again, you know, I'm generally friendly, that I'm very sort of direct, confrontational, straightforward, and I like it this way. But always remember that, you know, perhaps a place without Schwerpunkt and his 2,800 videos so far may not be that great of a place to be in, all right? The opportunity that you have with this stuff that I've put out in a completely public fashion that is continuously accessible, that you don't have to technically pay for, if not for your time listening or skipping the ads in between. Like it's, and I never inserted, I monetized my channel because YouTube did it in my stead, right? When it grew sophisticated. Yes, this is what YouTube does if you don't do it yourself. So at that point, I monetize it. But let's say, being grateful is a good thing. And I don't need you to thank me or to tell me how good I am or how high in my... I don't care about that. What I care about is that the history that I've so sort of hardly learned, you know, over the years in a comprehensive sense and to make sense of the world, even with my own bias, even with my own mistake, will have some positive effect on you, will be helpful. Right, we'll show you how important history is and how practically expendable it actually is, how it has to do with all of us. It's not a figure of speech. It's not like those cheesy, empty sort of professorial things. You have to think that history is important. They don't explain you why history is important. What we do on Schwerpunkt is regularly, continuously, exactly this. We start from the history. We don't start from the personal opinion. And then the quote-unquote, in this sense, personal opinion, there are persons that definitely have more important opinions than others, never commit the childish mistake of thinking that since everybody's entitled to their own opinion, their opinion have to have any worth whatsoever, for that matter, if they don't actually have it in particular. The question is, there is a way to build this knowledge. It's not about guessing. This is not about, again, also mechanistic citation or whatever. It is about growing. Right, and having been in some places that others haven't, right? Because again, I don't know anyone who has done what I've done here, or that researches what I research here. Like, aside from being reviewed and green-lighted by West Point professors that allowed me to publish now in the top tier journal, in the top world journal in this sense, on the subject, and having received, these are not the peer reviewers because I know who they are, they run the business, but let's say I also received peer reviewers that said, I'd never seen something written like this. Obviously, it's my article, it's peer reviewed, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing here. I never thought that my channel had to be peer reviewed, unlike what some Ask historian at some point fabricated me having ever claimed, and fabricating instead the notion that it would have sort of addressed the topic also of sources before, only when this was brought up on Reddit, where I, with a simple search, you would have seen that I did it months before and years before, actually, too. So in the same way, by the way. And so, I've been open. I've been interviewed. I've participated in live streams. I've been paid for works outside of here through the channel. I'm not pretending this sort of gives me credibility per se. I've never, again, used my titles for presuming that I knew something ipso facto better than somebody else, all right? But I'm telling you that since I've gone through it, you may want to appreciate that, at least in my experience, this is included. And so, again, it's like asking, I don't know, like a green sort of it's a doctor that has just finished 5 years of medicine, as opposed to somebody who sort of made surgeries for decades. Like, there is a difference in that, hence in the merit of knowledge. And then surely every person knows something that others don't. And so that's why we have to stay fair, just, open about everything. And I think that what I'm doing on Schwerpunkt is unequivocally oriented towards that direction. I think that's the thing that actually matters the most, and I really, so the reason why I enjoy making this content. I say this because today I was thinking, what do I talk about? And I was thinking, like, how is the channel transforming, whatever. But at the end of the day, I realized that, yeah, you see, here there are impediments, there are filters, there are things that I'm discussing because it's good for you to know. Like, if you don't like, for example, what I do, the way I do it, I absolutely understand. Like, if you don't like it, it's not a problem. I'm not sort of excusing myself. I'm just explaining why I do what I do the way I do. All right, and in many ways, the content choice, the topic choice, plays a role. And this will evolve over time because, again, there are always many different ways to cover different topics for different reasons, different sort of purpose. And this, in my opinion, is the only thing that will eventually form more and more awareness. The more you actually do the work. Right, if you talk from an abstract standpoint and you pretend to cram into this stuff something that is not based on it, it's not going to work well at all, right? And that's also what I see instead other channels fundamentally do. And in this sense, don't be trapped, don't be ensnared by those who pretend to be the saviors of the situation, where they tell you how the credibility of any content is just based on their, I don't know, Marxist ideology, or, the banking of this or that point without actually touching the wall at all, right? So this never happened to me. presumably, the more I'm growing as a conservative voice, the more we're going to face not much of these events, I presume, but say things like, I don't know, that the guy is a fascist. I don't care. If you tell me this, I've discovered, not at my expenses, but at my amusement, also how thinly skinned some sort of allegedly hardcore right-wingers, etc., can even be about the fact that basic criticism from people that probably are, in fact, much more right-wing than them, they don't even realize it, regarding, in fact, the fact that what I said before, that bending history to any particular preconceived notion is always going to backfire, right? And I have actually the deliberate I have the distinct impression that there is a deliberate effort to somehow gatekeep and or to sort of try to divert attention from my channel. If you have seen it, nobody has ever even sort of aggressed it. There are some channels, I mean, you would say that 30,000 is not that big, right, subscribers-wise, but say it's just, there are channels that are considered big that have 100,000 subscribers and routinely engage in sort of interactions. I've hardly received any attack. I've hardly received any cooperation offer as well. And I've hardly convinced, admittedly, convinced for this broader alliance, because I've never really, first of all, admittedly searched for any of this. I'm evidently a lone wolf in many ways. I've been reiteratedly repeated this and confirmed this over the years. And I like to work alone for sure, but the level of, say, this guy's doing something else entirely, and it may even be dangerous to everybody involved, because this is actually serious stuff, and if and serious stuff, again, I don't take it as, oh my god, I'm doing who knows what. It's so easy to be better than the average, because the average sucks. All right, if you're any better than sucking, probably you're going to threaten those who suck, and this is the problem. And I've always felt like this online, that people get, it's either love or hate. People, I'm going to read you a comment that I've just read, because it's objectively, ridiculous in a positive sense. You can check it in Medieval Serbian Ottoman Warfare, an overview. This guy says, bro, I'm sure someone at Paradox Studios listened to your Serbia videos. The new advancements for EU5 are so well extrapolated from a lot of what you spoke about. So first of all, I have no independent way to verify any of this. But what I mean is also this, I wouldn't be surprised, right? As I wouldn't be surprised actually, and I will not make any names because I don't have the proof of it, but there are some narratives, certain things like that are routinely taken from some of my videos by some of the bigger channels. And the worst about that is that it's not much that this is done without crediting, or at least without any particular, I would never do such a thing. Who does copy videos? I can understand the topic of the video, but I'm not claiming that somebody stole my videos, but that, again, also when you are in this position, you don't even care that much, telling the truth. Don't do it. And also because YouTube will shut down your channel if you do so. But aside from that, the videos taken in the general concept, and still the general concept is explained wrongly, right? And I'm not going to say, not even going to say which video it is, and you will say, oh, Schwerpunkt, this is gatekeeping. You are actually acting, I don't know, modern, I don't know, conspiracy theorist, or try to get to are you trying to play the victim card? No, I'm just observing, right? And I'm not surprised at all, because people who strive to be relevant, even with bigger channels, that apparently don't know what to do, or say, I stopped because I wanted to cover most of the things that matter. I will not say which channel this was, but it's a very famous channel, and he literally said, I stopped here because it seems to me that the main things to cover were covered. And they were I don't know, just 200 videos, 100 videos? I mean, do you think you can have legitimately covered all what mattered history of warfare like, and at which level if you just make 100, 200 videos? This is very obscure to me. I strive to cover the bare minimum about sort of everything after 2,800 videos, and only by YouTube standards that are partly sort of based on fact also what other people do on YouTube. According to you, this was essentially, if you're motivated by great spread of information, of popularizing military history, of making disclosure, this is your standard. No wonder I have the certainty that I will die before I will have covered everything I wanted to cover. It's obvious, right? And this is also the interesting thing. The more videos I made, and the more videos I realize I wanted to make, and there are to make, and I can't make because there are too many. And this is fantastic. I would say this, I could have said this at the beginning of the video, but I think it's relevant in more than one way. But the interesting part of my content is how entwined this is, right? If you really want to search for one topic, it may be that I haven't covered them. I mean, about the 20th century, I still haven't done much. I haven't covered World War II in any meaningful sense. I made some videos about it. They're not bad, and they can open to more, and I will do more. We're, as I was saying at the beginning, homogenizing kind of everything in that sense. But still, for how scattered they are, they're still very much intertwined. Let's leave aside the top 6 comments. They're very useful because you find all the related videos, and I choose them really one by one at every video I make. Forget also the playlists per se. These are excellent means if you really want to get into the hyperlinked kind of galaxy of Schwerpunkt. You can travel with your spaceship at the speed of light across times and places in ways you wouldn't think. But it is in fact the connection that exists between them in terms of content that matters, right? If you're really like, this is especially about the Middle Ages on my channel for obvious reasons. If you're interested in, I want to know about that country in Europe, say in the 12th century, you will find a lot about that and a lot of connected videos that are very pertinent, and surely you would be interested in once you know that they are covered, by the way, always more or less at the same level of depth, right? My videos are fundamentally all at least 1 hour long. They always bring to the table sort of actual food, like actual information, something you can base yourself on. And in this sense, they keep getting watched because people probably understand that this is the actual treasure of it. I'm not entirely sure, again, because I don't watch my own videos and I don't know how even ethical this would be, especially considering my academic standards and my professional activity, to claim such a thing like that you can not substitute, obviously, a formal educational path to Schwerpunkt. That's not a thing. It's not about the content. Maybe by content, in fact, as we'll see now, yes. But the difference is working on something. That's why there is education, lower, higher, and why at the end of the day, the best historians tend to be people who go through that. However, as I was just saying, in fact, by theme, if you're really sort of committed to the task and you really enjoy listening to my videos, just know that, first of all, it's unlikely that you're ever being able to exhaust even a half of what I've uploaded, right? Because at this point, we're literally talking about tens of thousands of hours, right? So it's really a great endeavor. Like, if you can spend an incredibly large amount of time listening to my videos and sort of forming an opinion, an idea. But in this sense, make the math of this, even for a few videos, and realize on your basis of your own experience, how much you actually learned, or at least you opened your mind to, you discovered just by looking at my videos. Even just the topics, the titles alone, to say, there is actually this thing that I had never heard of. Literally, I can't stress enough how there are not just individual videos here and there, but entire series, and most of this actual sort of content that is truly that is discussed on my channel and nowhere else on YouTube. Right? This is incredibly important to stress. And I'm not talking just about even niche topics or the secondary ones. Some of the sort of most foundationally important topics in medieval European history are completely absent in the current pop cultural landscape. And even actually some of the most discussed topics are discussed in pretty shallow ways that do not actually get anywhere in terms of providing with actual information. I don't know how many documentaries exist on the Tudors, right? And how many people have ever derived from that, like, I don't know, any information regarding the Tudor army organization. Just to make an example. You would find on my channel this stuff that is also not completely random, in the sense that it's random within a broader pool of information that I decided to put together and that I haven't even began to scratch the surface of, and that is, however, very structured. There are series. In the last year, we got a bit more into the evidential side of the story because we tended to make, in fact, such videos like armies organization, military units, but looking at the armies in action sometimes. And so you have at this point is a very interesting mix of, you want to know about a given country in this century of the Middle Ages, you're going to have campaigns, battles, military units, army organization, tactics, every kind of political, in fact, military, social topic at hand, and it's all there. You can easily access it, and I sort of explain all this stuff on top of it. So it's obvious that at least a part of my audience would be able to profitably use this information to the extent of really compounding great part of their historical knowledge and education on this specific subject through my channel. This is what you can do with it. And I truly think that it works. I don't think it's hyperbole. It's not. You couldn't do this through other channels. On other channels, you can have, this is the standard mostly. Oh, look, this topic is cool. Have you ever heard of it? And then it ends in 15 minutes, right? And maybe there are sort of deeper dives of half an hour, 40 minutes, but then it's always very often either sort of very basic topics or topics that are expanded through other basic stuff in the surroundings. There are some channels that present themselves as sort of, that they properly focus on a certain period, a certain topic, and they kind of really don't say anything. Let's leave aside the fact that they're not, you can visibly see through the eye of the scholar that they're incompetent. They don't have any properly formal academic background on the subject. They don't know how to address it. They do it, as we were saying before, sometimes for very ideological reasons. And they tend also to make everything sparse. Like their goal, most of their goal truly is just to earn on YouTube, to go viral and to make money. That's what they want. All right. I wouldn't mind that happening, obviously. I thought about it, and maybe I'm not sure that I would even like it in particular, but probably would be able to handle it without any problem, because I sort of discovered this the more I age. The more I discover how I'm sort of naturally inclined to heavy lifting, so to say, and I don't really have any. I'm trying to invest in it as much as I can anymore, as you can see on Schwerpunkt as well. But this is also why, in fact, we need to fill all these gaps. As I was saying at the beginning, the reason why this channel is seemingly, at this point, like properly getting the algorithm, and I will not get perhaps too much into the depths of this. Maybe we can look at analytics later, but it's the fact that the mass, this is like a hyper heavy element like nucleus and starting to let out an unstoppable energy wave, so to say. This is what seemingly starts happening with my content. It is destined by this pace and this density to blow up at some point. Again, maybe not in the very most explosive fashion, but definitely in some sort of volcanic eruption and greater sort of lavic stratification. It's going to overwhelm the surroundings, so to say, right? So I truly believe that when people will watch this years from now, there's going to be someone like, they probably say, well, this guy was doing the right thing, likely, because, he even getting to 32,000 subscribers is not something that really everybody gets to when they start a YouTube channel. Most people give up, right? It may not be much, but of course, if you don't try, if you don't persist, you don't persevere, you're also simply not going to be seen or heard. There are people that still come to me and say, okay, I like your channel, I subscribed immediately, but I had never heard of you. This is thank YouTube for being bad, but also to reflect how often did you search for any specific topic? How autonomous are you in terms of proper topic search and the capacity of finding new information? It's very complicated. As far as the engagement goes, I don't really have much to tell. I always send to my audience. I have never, as you know, I always avoided to stuff like ads, promotions. I've never really done that, right? And for this reason, I'm evidently not particularly just reliant on YouTube income per se. Again, I am good at getting income, but I'm not in the sense that otherwise I don't know how to feed myself. That's not the point. I'm just a treasure in many ways, and you would be surprised by how, I can say, Spartan my life is, because I'm sort of fairly spoiled in many things, but how I really need very few things to work well, right? At a certain level with a certain tone, but just sort of being content with what I have. I'm not this overwhelming. I love to treasure, but in this sense, not necessarily to spend. I really am a long-term investor, and I mostly live my life in that way. The general interaction with the public has been mostly, I would say, subject to the algorithm. Yes, I have actually fantastic followers. As I said before, I'm always stunned at people who pay me. Again, you don't have to pay me per se. If you really want to do something, you can pay me. But seriously, the thing, somebody will, in any case, that's what I mean. The thing that matters the most is visibility. If you can share my content everywhere, and also being able to defend it, because it is a specifically heavy content, right? It's not such a easy thing to go out there and declare that I'm good. I mean, probably some people are more straightforward and sort of stable. They understand that and they go for it. Others, as I said before, they're really insecure about this whole YouTube stuff. Who is this guy? How accurate is, how reliable his content is, and whatever, right? My point is, share it, try to guard it in a way, but not make gatekeeping, because it doesn't really bring anywhere in that sense, no direction, none of us. And in this sense, supporting it in an organic way, I would say. Regarding payment, just for telling you how things go here, I have the memberships from a couple of years, and of 32,000 subscribers, I have, I think, not even 30, let's say one person out of 1,000 paying me, which is absolutely in line with what you would expect from YouTube in a general sense. But so most of them is just, again, I feel terribly grateful even for people who pay just a couple of bucks for the act of it, right? It may sound bad, let's say, but to me, it's not even how much you donate, but the fact that you donate that strikes me. It's like, like, why would anybody do it? I personally never done it, but so I must presume that you really like my work and to take this extra step, this leap forward, that I think is very important in very deeper. I'm not exaggerating when I say traditional theological ways, because I would say I'm not tight-fisted either, aside from what I said before. If I have to spend, I have to spend. But let's say it's something that I have actually faith in mankind, but let's say I know that its earthly face, it's normally ugly and mean, and it doesn't sort of show these acts. And I'm trying to idealize people who do any of this, let's say, but they always strike me because they make me think that there is a level of gratitude for my content that goes beyond normal gratitude. And so that's what I'm talking about this. Financially, it doesn't sort of, it makes something. I would say this, like if only even a person out of 100 instead of 1,000 paid me a couple of bucks, I would have a fully fledged extra salary. Just for saying, like what I make here is not completely a misery, but it's something that, makes me think like this is not a job. All right. So I say it because if in the future also I will have to make some choices, that obviously income at some point will play a factor as well in determining whether I have to dedicate myself more to Schwerpunkt or not. So that's actually the only reason why I'm discussing this at the end of the day. It's up to you as much as it's up to me, and the universe turn into a scenario in which I'm here, I make these videos, you pay me this much, and we're going on towards the unknown still. However, just know that I'm really grateful for everything, for the views, for the watch length, for the subscriptions, for all the people who defend me out there whenever like some mischaracterization, misunderstanding is made. Like, I appreciate it because it's not owed, right? It's not because of the action per se. It's not what this thing actually does in practice. I would like to stress this. It's the fact that there are people who sort of vibe with what I'm saying to the point of probably realizing what it's in it is, I don't know, right or good. They're two very different things, as a matter of fact, but you may never know how this stuff actually works. And so 3 million views is not sort of just truly a number. Like I would have to celebrate 3 million and one, or 3,025,673 views. I don't know. But it's a way to look at this whole work and sort of realizing that we got far and that we got ahead probably than we thought at some point. There were some ups and downs, as you know, over the years. I've had my highs and lows as well. Nothing overly dramatic, especially on the surface or outwards. I've always had more or less the same type of life, and I've always sort of being lucky and I'm eternally thankful for this. And life is life. You really never know what's going to happen. But innerly, I'm a person who has some rather rich sort of moral life. It's incredible to feel, even when bad things happen, how this actually helps you. As you probably realized, much of what I've done on the channel is connected with this. In many ways, again, there is nothing really exceptional what happened in my life, at least. Everything is exceptional if you think about it. There are some things I never really understood whether they were important or not, where it was me who felt too little or too few sometimes. It's obvious that we change, but we grow older, things work differently. But I must say that much of what we do, and especially what has brought to our improvement of the channel, of the content, etc., passed through many things that happened to me. That history learning, as I was telling you before, is never random, is never uniform. It's never fully shared with others. It's always something personal. Right, it's always biased, but in this sense, it's biased for also the richness that can bring with the proper arguments and proper evidence. So I think that on Schwerpunkt we proved how true this was, right? And this is what we're seeing. In any case, we're striving to achieve. And I use the plural here because we often do it like on Schwerpunkt, and it is meant to mean you and I, because obviously if I weren't here, you wouldn't be here either. Like, this thing would not exist, would have had a completely different life to an extent, especially me, naturally, but by the degree, the intensity of your thought, something like, you would probably be surprised by how even a thought that I gave you really made you take some different turns that only down the line you may have said, well, this thing actually changed me, it changed my life, and so I hope for the better. Like, I'm not the sole factor, hopefully, yeah, but the general work that we've done is felt. These 3 million views, more than subscriptions, more than income. I can't say more than watch length, because objectively watch length is the most important one. At the end of the day, I can tell you here we have 562,000 hours of watch length, which I will make a brief calculation. Hours, how many days and years is that? It's probably not even an enormous amount. It's, well, days doesn't matter in this, it's 64 years. So you have been listening to me as if a person had listened. Okay, this person would have killed himself before for 64 years straight my content, right? And so we are getting the words, and we're getting ever more views and watch likes. So this thing will get to the century at some point. So at that point, it really would feel deep, and by the point it would be something like 5 million views. And I'm sure the channel is actually going there at some point. Like, even if I stopped making videos today, it was, I was run over by a car or something like that, probably these views would be received at some point, and my voice will echo in eternity, or as long as YouTube servers will work or something like that. And this is strange. Like, especially in the first years, I got lots of people who told me, I still have people of this kind tell me, you know what, I left my country and I went studying abroad because I listened to your videos. Presumably, I didn't do it just for it, but receiving a letter of that kind is like, you can't even say it makes your day, because then it makes you think, but maybe I ruined this person's life, I don't know. But this is actually a very powerful reminder that we are all incredibly responsible for everything we do. So talking about history so much, getting to 3 million views and 64 years of watch length, it's like I've given to the world probably more than I can see just through the YouTube analytics. And I can't control and check and whatever. And this is also what I was thinking about today, in fact. That is something I sort of, by character, normally I'm not inclined to say or do. But let's say, and I've said it actually other times on Schwerpunkt, that I would like to sort of see you participating. This is not because of the engagement per se of stuff. It's like a way to build this community is to be more vocal about it on the channel itself. For example, as you know, you say, but Schwerpunkt, you never interact with us. You're always hidden in your ivory tower somewhere in Europe, and we don't know anything. Like, your ghost may be, flying here and there. You may be really omnipresent somewhere in a metaphysical fashion. my voice definitely resonates at this point in all continents in the world, but you never interact with us. And the reason is in part by, again, personality. I'm not definitely a particularly open person. I'm also pretty disagreeable, as I think it's kind of self-evident. But I can't say you're present in my life because I think about you. Like I say, I have this many subscribers. I say most of the day I think really about something else than the channel. And so I can't say this is such a deep connection. I know some of you. I actually even met some of you. I talked to some of you. I had some general, let's say, like I recognize you. Like I know who you are, more or less. Not all of you, obviously, but this is the point. I have no clue of who you are at large. I have here in the subscriptions, see, like I can see who you are. If I don't know how this works in the sort of privacy setting, but some of the subscribers are public, and so I can see here different people and say, who are you? Behind a avatar, behind a name, whatever. Like I have no clue of who you are. You seem so different. I can't even begin to imagine how much difference there is among you. But in this sense, I would like to understand that better. I would like you to sort of private emails usually are for the Q&As, right? So there are some curious people that come up sometimes and say, I would like to know this, whatever, what you think about it. Can you cover it in the Q&A? Okay, you can keep doing that. But for example, in the comments, you would be surprised by how certain videos, I never say which ones they are, or at least I say it when I make them. And not necessarily the person who asked for it, unless I post it normally in that case under the comment, said it. But how often in this sense some comments, some requests, some demands you made actually turn into videos in a way or another. I can't say directly, simply you ask for this video and I make the video. That's not normally how it happens. But there are some ideas, right? For example, today I prepared a video because I said something about wanting to make a video of a certain kind, and somebody said, I'm interested in this and I want to make this video for years, but maybe because this guy said, okay, I want to hear it. Okay, I prepared it. So it's going to be made in the next few months for sure. So that has an impact. Like your presence is felt. I know you. I'm aware of you, and I hear about you, right? As my followers, I again feel this deep sense of, okay, there is something ghostly here. It's just like truly a ghost that works here behind the numbers of YouTube. I know that there are people from the other side. I don't see you. I don't know your names. I don't know your faces. I don't know what you think. I don't know where you come from. I have stats to tell me, but it's all very impersonal. The only moment in which I know who you are is when you express an opinion, you comment something, you ask for something, and I actually still control everything. Like, meaning that I fundamentally read everyone. I don't have any doesn't take much time, frankly. And probably it's also fine like this. And I know that even when I make these requests, there is no way to simply, presume that according you will do something. But, that there is going to be an effect of that kind. And so that I doubt that because of this, there's going to be a sudden surge in your manifestations or whatever. But just know that there is a way these interactions translate into a particular approach in the channel. That is the bias that I was talking about before. Meaning that if you are, for example, particularly concerned about something, or you point out even criticism, I absorb all of it. It's, I think, very healthy and sort of fair. I've never seen sort of bad things in it. Even when somebody behaves poorly, this happens very rarely, telling the truth, that I need to block them because they're insulting not much me but others, or say something very outrageous in general. The still that has like I will remember that, right? And I will therefore address you. It's like when you talk to a class, right? You start to know the students, and so you start properly tailoring your teaching on the basis of their needs, of their requests, of their questions, whatever. Like, is that you need to teach them more because if you see that they're more responsive on a certain subject, if they're more knowledgeable, it's kind of easier. You don't have to insist in that part of it. That's how you see bias is done. There isn't such an empty, cold, skeletal history that I can deliver you and that's it. This is all I can say quite warmly, not in an emotional sense, but warmly in a sort of reasonable sense, tailored on the experience that I've had on YouTube. And after 3 million views, I think I have some experience on YouTube. And so may not be an enormous number, but it entered the scale, the league of sort of the medium toward bigger kind of experience. And for how sort of unusual Schwerpunkt 1 is, I think that after all, it is a useful, productive one, and you're definitely protagonists of this as much as I am. Normally in these videos, we tend to look at the analytics, but I'm not overly thrilled by it. The things that I liked the most about the early YouTube, there was the map of the world that showed you just at a first glance where you came from. Instead, there isn't the map anymore. It's so boring. It's just a list of countries. I want my map. Like, I love geography, as you know, so that was very funny and sort of visually sort of stimulating. As always, as I read here, I don't know if I go by views, given that this video is about the views or the watch length, but I can see both here. The interesting aspect of this is that so the best performing, I will make this note. So there is a percentage of views and a percentage of watch length from the total, and there is a percentage that there is a first 4 countries that have essentially that have the highest that have a higher percentage of overall watch length compared to the number of views, which means that they are probably the more committed and the one to watch the most. And we have obviously United States. There's also the average view length, and this changes actually for this month, but here they're also scholarly the biggest blocks. We have the United States making 35%. So more than 1/3 of our viewers are American, and not only, essentially over 2/5 of the watch length belong to them. And it's a very good number. In fact, as I just said, of these 3 millions, over 1 million views came from the United States. Congratulations. And the average watch length is particularly long. It's 13 minutes 25, which on a big number of views is definitely remarkable. Then there are the British that constitute almost a 6%, but watch slightly less. Actually, no, these are not the first more deserving ones. I should definitely do by watch length, which is a different thing. But this doesn't compound the size of the thing. So, okay, probably the British, I totally understand you. You're annoyed by my English. And so, given that you created that language, so sorry for it. Perhaps that's what brings it to 10:30 as an average watch length. The Canadians, however, watch me a lot in that sense. They are much less than the British, but they reach 4% of the total views and 4% of the total watch length, and they watch me for 11 minutes 54 seconds on average. Then we have quite disciplinedly Germany with a 3.7%, and here we're going by watch length essentially in order, in 11 minutes 20. So the Americans are somehow particularly dedicated. Then looking at the bigger countries that score particularly highly, we have Finland with a striking 19 minutes, actually 20 minutes, de facto, minus 3 seconds, that watched 18,000 times. Particularly dedicated are, let's see here, just by watch length instead. Few countries really watch a lot for their capacities. Finland is definitely the top one. By size, it's incredible. It tops everybody. There is Morocco with an average of 20 minutes and 4 seconds that beats Finland, but it has only 40 views, so it's sort of relatively irrelevant in a quantitative point of view, but I salute my Moroccan followers. Papua New Guinea are third, but only 20 views, so this barely count. We have Iceland with over 100 views, 17 minutes. Croatia, apparently, is very disciplined, but we fall to 13 minutes, so they're starting to align with the Americans. The same goes, we're in the thousands here. Malaysia, then in fact we have the United States. They have the same 13 minutes, 25 Malaysia, by the way. Then there is, interestingly enough, Portugal and Serbia. Moldavia, Czechia, Switzerland, Latvia, Bulgaria, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Germany, Estonia, Austria, Poland, Romania, Ukraine, Hungary, again the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, Belgium, Slovakia, Barbados, Ecuador, South Africa, China even, Taiwan. And so again, this is very interesting because it shows some truly worldwide interest that, however, by number of views, because this is what today's video is about, we can say in this order: United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, Italy, Australia. These have remained normally at the top always. The Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Brazil, Sweden, France, Spain, India, Chile, Finland, Belgium, Serbia, Norway, Greece, Ireland, Czechia, Philippines, Portugal, Russia, Croatia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Hungary, Ukraine, New Zealand, Argentina, Austria, Denmark, South Korea, Switzerland, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, Mexico, South Africa, Japan, Lithuania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Israel, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Cuba, Mongolia, and Kenya. And these are all the ones that get tracked. No, not. There are more, but for some reason the list stops here. I don't know why. In watch length overall, it's actually, I think, pretty much this almost the same at the top. Actually, it's almost the same. It just Australia surpasses Italy, but the list is the same. United States, UK, Canada, Germany, Australia, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Switzerland, Finland, Brazil, France, Spain, Serbia, Chile, Norway, Belgium, Czechia, Portugal, Croatia, Greece, Bulgaria, India, Ireland. And okay, well, this is the overall picture. The other stat is, where do people watch me from? So this is the traffic sources. I detest YouTube analytics. It's so poorly made. But at least it gives you raw data. And we have navigational functions. There are normally something like YouTube search, all the stuff. Here I would have to click in the sub parts. It's not so important. What I wanted to see rather, I don't know why this is slow. I have a good connection. Why is this evening this so slow? It's just maybe some pages that it's just YouTube Studio that is weird. Sorry for the inconvenient, but the traffic, so it's just slow. Well, I don't know. It's just the mechanism of YouTube Studios, not the connection. I don't know why. It's just that's why I was saying it sucked. By the way. And so, as you understand, it's normal business. Okay, so as I remember, this is not so interesting. But now I have to close this every time it does this. God. YouTube search. This is interesting with people what they search to get to my content. It mostly shows the historical topics that end up sort of being covered in this sense the most. And it's not very positive to hear because like there's so many good topics here. There are ups and downs. It's just the search obviously is Schwerpunkt more often than not. This is really dominant, so basically all the rest is practically useless. But historically, this was the case. Merovingians, Avars, Sarmatians, Landsknecht. Consider that this is the stats from the whole existence of Schwerpunkt, of all the 3 million views. Scythians, Alans, late Roman army, pre-Islamic Arabia. So this is all stuff we accumulated over some specific videos that are so old. So it's almost useless to see what kind of origin. Traffic source, it seems like the navigational functions are the most important ones. This is probably, I don't know how it works, whether it's notification, it's just how you're showed in your home page. I think that's what happens actually. Then the suggestions now are currently peaking. I don't know how or why. YouTube search is second, I think, in our advice videos is it's gradually increasing. And playlists, no, it's mostly the suggested videos. And the external one that is admittedly very scarce overall, but has given signs of growth. This means from which other external sites this is what is also interesting to break down, because it's mostly Google, obviously. But then there are other sites, and it's not so easy to understand even how or why that happens, but it gives you a clear breakdown of everything. Facebook, then it says YouTube again, which is a smaller part. I don't understand what it means by that. Discord. Apparently, lots of people watch me on Discord. There is somebody who tell me, but we have he lured me because probably wanted to give away my persona, wanted me to participate in the debates or to expose me. I don't know, but they said we have a Discord channel about you. Why don't you come? I declined. DuckDuckGo, X, Bing, Google, Reddit, WhatsApp, search Brave, Discord again. One is discord.com, another is Discord. Probably, I don't know whether it's the app or whatever. ChatGTP. This was interesting. I don't know if in X there is the Grok thing too, because if there is ChatGTP, that is normally not taking information from online before a certain, at least that have separated there. Here I don't see Google Gemini, for example. I don't know, maybe within Google itself, as opposed to Google search that is separated. So that would be very interesting to know, because I know that lots of people, as I was saying before, are also interacting with my channel through AI. Archerhistorian.com. What the hell is this? They're posting stuff about me. The first time I see it. Maybe they're just saying that I'm terrible or something. No, just stupid managing the damned cookies here to even search for my own stuff. You see how the internet is really a trap in many ways. Let me see about these. Here's the trap. Legitimate interest destroy. But just for saying how strange the whole thing really is, like you sometimes end up on these sites and you don't really understand who these people are. You see, for example, here I don't know if they're praising me or criticizing me, but it would be interesting to hear from them, like, because they mostly presumably watch me on YouTube, right? And it's not like I'm particularly, say, specialized in archery or anything. Here, just to kill the time, I was thinking about this now, for example, how I've come to very often comment and criticize on Scholar Gladiatoria that I very much admire as a channel in general. And you see, I don't want to open parentheses about sword tubers or anything. I'm not talking about Matt Easton in particular, but it's plenty of bad history around these environments that somehow insistate in whatever. Schwerpunkt is an antidote to this stuff. If you want to understand also the psychology of why these things happen, rather than talking about swords, like some people would like to simply presume that everything is, just like presuming in fact that it's just, it's very strange how people tend to conflate method with authority, just switching between the two only at convenience. Right, being so fussy, as we said before, about citations, but say, I don't know, that is an expert just because he fights with a sword, and in what? In fighting with a sword, not in the art of war or in medieval tactics. That's, oh my god, this is so long. No, I'm never going to accept. Bad, because I was curious about this. I would have to search for this. I would actually ask Grok. How or why? What do they say about this? And there are lots of things that are coming into my mind about this whole this whole scenario, and how this sort of, how often, how much you can use my. Okay, here it says that there is no connection, which is weird because it must have been posted somewhere. So either, again, Grok in this case can't crawl the site, or I don't know what to say. Very difficult to know how any of this will evolve. I think that with AI as well, YouTube is going to change. I think that the current algorithm favor derives mostly from some kind of strange alignment. They probably changed the algorithm recently, or I managed to break the mold, and so I'm finally and organically sticking to around 3,000 views a day. And I don't know how anything will evolve. I can't promise you that YouTube will be the best place in, I don't know, 5 years from now. I have everything saved, so you don't have to worry that, at least you should worry that I have things saved. It may not be re-uploaded, but I would try if anything was to happen. For now, the channel has been on very smooth sailing. We also tackled very controversial topics, and I've hardly ever been demonetized or sanctioned in any way. So a pretty reliable channel, and probably the algorithm is starting to favor it for this reason. But without you, this wouldn't be possible. There wouldn't be 3 million views to cover. It would have not been like, and the tens of thousands of viewers would have not been the general spread and all the effect that I can think of from the other side, as I was saying before, that you are the only people that can actually speak of, meaning you are the ones who can tell a story about Schwerpunkt, how it changed your life, and to properly recount how of a effect this channel has. That is very interesting. I think other people would be interested in covering it, reading the stuff, and sort of being ever more aware of the nature of this channel. That is, today we didn't talk much esoterics or anything, but you understand that, as I said at the beginning, this is not really a normal channel. This is not really your typical YouTube channel or creator or content. It's something else. And I don't want to talk too much about it because, I don't know, I'm probably in a phase where I'm not particularly chatty, even though, of course, these videos are very long, but as you understand, I'm lengthening it a little bit. When I have, say, before making this video, I have all these ideas in mind, and I'm able to tell a lot of it, but I'm sure that there's always something more to add, and it hardly... none of this can be simply satisfactory. So I decided to make this video. I didn't lengthen it too much here. I was just reading the analytics that weren't too easy to read, and so I sort of slowed down a little. You could look at the demographics. This is very interesting. In terms of views, this has always been the case. Top 37.3% people between 25 and 34. Even though I think it takes obviously into account people who were 25, 34, also several years ago where the count began. So it's not easy at all to read this. Then 35 to 44, 19.9, 18 to 24, 19.7, 45 to 54, 10.9, 55 to 64, 6.4, 65 more, 5.6. In 13 to 17, I don't know how it's counted, 0.3, but probably there are more because of age. Interestingly enough, the ones that watch the least are the over 65 and the 18 to 24, whereas basically everybody in between has pretty good watch length on average. This is very interesting, especially the highest is 35-44, which it's difficult to interpret. It's as if like the early millennials or the late generation X somehow was more interested in this stuff, even in people my age. So it's sort of strange, but it's fascinating nevertheless. In fact, I would like to hear more from them, because I also don't know how old you are. From the comments, I have no way to tell. Maybe maybe you're an old person. I have no clue, right? And that helps understanding things better overall. But I guess that we're here exactly to make things more interesting in that regard. What can I say if not thank you? In the end, I'm sure we can. If you're interested, we can make this kind of conversations more often. Again, I tended not to because I don't think it's that interesting. So at least it starts becoming repetitive. You can surely get a bit more of me, but as we said, this is not the purpose of why I'm here to begin with. It can be interesting. I understand that there is a bit of mystery surrounding my persona in general, but I care about history more, and it's also to be like that. Like the mystery helps, because it's very funny actually to see people guessing where I am from and my background, my ideas, and so on. It's quite fascinating. A bit of misinformation is actually effective. It helps actually clarify, because more people come and sort of understand and see more. Now, what else? I was thinking, yeah, this is just about the history. I can't, again, make more of these videos, but I prefer just, if you ask, most of the Q&As are the place where we can have these conversations with a broader purpose of actually answering a real historical question and discussing also these broader points. But in general, I think that you can easily get this from the general background, the general topics that I discuss. You have plenty of videos like this. Even listening to 2 hours of this is going to be probably extenuating. And so I leave you with some good food, so to say, for thought, if anything. For today, however, I stop it here. I will not finish in the same way, but I really thank you again heartily for this. It's been an interesting journey today. I didn't talk much about the history of Schwerpunkt, how I accumulated these views, and I realized altogether they made what they are. So having arrived at this point and having all the rest of the content discussing at some point what happened to me, how the channel changed, etc. Like, we'll talk about these things in the future too, but it's already there, right? This video is just realizing, wow, thank you for the 3 millions, and let's continue like this. I'm hopeful that we can definitely get somewhere adequate with this. I haven't told you much about my projects. As a matter of fact, I tend to do it more with the subscribers milestones, but the future is also unpredictable. So the growth here is giving some hope about some sort of scaling up, like reaching a new plateau, regular views. And so as long as we're growing and these millions of views really help and are indicative of it, really, let's continue this way. I'm sure the things will improve. And I really wish you the best. I hope that your life is great, that everything good can come to you as you deserve it. And I think that, in this sense, accepting what you deserve, for better or for worse, is always the best way to life. And so I'm sure that this channel helps navigating these issues, the ups and downs, whatever sort of happens, and how we can make sense of it, not in a subjective or relative way, but in fact in something that lays beyond, and that is definitely more mysteriously important, but in this sense positively shining bright, that our earthly existence would make us believe. And so I really wish you, here it's evening, like wish you a good night actually, wherever you are, whichever part of the day you are, and see you next time. Bye.